that it is so easy to judge circumstances in isolation because we're only seeing one little piece of the puzzle, but God sees the bigger picture. Have you ever heard the story about the man and the horse? It goes like this. A man owned a horse and one day it ran away. So his neighbour came over and says to him, "Isn't it such bad luck that your horse ran away?" And the man says, "Maybe." A couple of days later, the horse comes back and it brings all these other horses back. And the neighbour goes over to the man and says, "Isn't it such good luck that your horse ran away? Because if it hadn't ran away, it wouldn't have brought back all these other horses." And the man says, "Maybe." A couple of days later, the man's son is riding one of these horses and falls off and breaks his leg. The neighbour comes over and says to the man, "Isn't it such bad luck that your horse ran away, brought back these other horses, that your son would ride one of them, fall off and break his leg?" And the man says, "Maybe." And at that time, the army happened to be conscripting young men to go to war. And because the man's son had broken his leg, he didn't have to go to war. So the neighbour goes over to the man and says, "Isn't it such good luck that your horse ran away, brought back these other horses, your son was on one of them, fell off, broke his leg and doesn't have to go to war?" And the man said, "Maybe." So the point of this story is that it is so easy to judge circumstances in isolation because we're only seeing one little piece of the puzzle, but God sees the bigger picture. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11 that He makes everything beautiful in its time. It also says in Romans 8:28 that all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and who are called according to His purposes. And what is that good? In verse 29 it tells us that it's to be conformed to the image of His Son. So we see a couple of things in this verse, and one is that God works to the good of those who are walking in His will, in the path of obedience, pursuing righteousness, holiness and purity. And that as we're walking in that path, He realigns our hearts with His hearts so that we would desire the good that He desires for us, which is to be conformed to become more like Jesus. And as we do this, God will work this in us no matter what the circumstance and produce good fruit no matter what is going on around us. The times and the circumstances that we despise the most are often those which are most necessary for God to work His good in and through us. The winter has to come first before the season of harvest can come. And without it, fruit cannot be produced. And it's the same in our lives also. Have a look at this picture. Beautiful, isn't it? Not really. I mean, you're probably trying to work out what it is, and it looks very ugly and confusing. Okay, now let's zoom out and have a look at this now. What do you think? Beautiful, isn't it? But every one of those little dark parts is necessary in the formation of the overall picture. And without the darkness, the light can't be brought out. We can't judge one part of this picture in isolation because we don't know what the rest of the picture contains. You see, we are only looking at one little piece at a time in our lives, and God knows the overall picture. He is the master painter, and with each stroke of the brush, He is producing something beautiful if we'll yield to Him and allow Him. He's the grand weaver, and He's weaving one thread at a time. No matter how ugly or confusing or dark that thread may be, it's forming part of an overall tapestry, which is beyond beautiful. We can't see the bigger picture, but God can see the bigger picture. And all that we have to do is to be faithful in obedience and pursuing God's will moment by moment, no matter what comes, and allow Him to work good from it. Oswald Chambers says that God will not reveal what He's going to do, but He will reveal who He is. And because God is who He says He is in His word, we can rest in Him in every moment and His understanding and power and wisdom and love, knowing that He is working all things for our good as we walk in the path of obedience. We need to take our eyes off of what we can see and put our eyes onto the God who sees what we don't see. One story that instantly comes to mind when I think of this is the story of Joseph. He was sold into slavery. He was wrongly accused of trying to take advantage of Potiphar's wife, and he was thrown into prison for 2 years. And this whole story of events happened over 13 years. And I think to myself that even one moment before Joseph was released from prison, he wouldn't have been able to see in the normal how his circumstances were working for the good, how anything good could come out of this situation. But then God takes him out of prison, puts him before Pharaoh, he interprets Pharaoh's dream, and he's made second in charge over Egypt, the greatest empire on earth. This could never have happened if he hadn't gone through those circumstances that he went through, and God used those to get him there. It says in the Bible that the enemy intended this for evil, but God used it for good and put him in a position that he would have had no other way of getting to. And that is what saved and preserved the nation of Israel. How amazing is that? But keep in mind that it is his definition of good that you're pursuing, to become more like Christ and to be used for his kingdom. In the story of Joseph, God didn't raise him up there just so that he could be promoted and have a better salary and have more influence and become more popular. He put him there for a specific purpose for the nation of Israel, to save them and to continue on his redemptive story through history. If you are pursuing your own will and operating outside of God's will, pursuing your own desires and not pursuing Christ and walking in holiness and righteousness and purity, and trying to determine what is good and produce that in your own life, then all things are not working to your good. All things are actually working to your harm. Because once you step outside of God's will, you step outside of his promises. And just like with a bad situation, you can look at one piece of the puzzle and miss the picture, the same with a good situation. You may well be fooled. And when you see that bigger picture, either in this life or in eternity, you will see how foolish living this way really is. So I will encourage you not to trust in your circumstances, not to trust in your own understanding or what you think is right. Your life may be a mess right now, but to get your eyes onto God and to get your eyes onto his character and trust that he is working for your good, even if you can't comprehend that right now, it doesn't matter. All that matters is the truth of his word, and nothing changes that. In my own journey, and I've shared a bit about this in previous videos, I'm going to share a lot more about it coming up too. The last 5 years I've gone through chronic illness, I've gone through heartbreak, I've experienced the loss of almost everything really in my life. And I can tell you that I've never been more at rest in my life. Those circumstances have worked something in me and are preparing me for something greater. And my eyes have come off of looking to my circumstances to make me happy, but to looking to God. And not even the greatest circumstances could even touch the peace and the joy and the love that I feel right now, and everything that he has taught me during these times. And I trust him fully. And that is all that I'm focused on, moment by moment. I read a really great story in a Corrie ten Boom book where she talks about this fabric, and on one side it's got all this stitching and cross-stitching and it looks ugly, you can't really see what it is. And then you turn it over to the other side and it has a crown on it. And how true this is of our lives. And we're not going to be able to truly see the good that God is working in our life until we get to the other side of eternity. And then we're going to look back on it and we're going to think, wow, how did I ever doubt you, God? No matter how hard things might be right now for you. Who knows that the dark circumstances that may be in your life right now aren't the canvas on which God is going to shine his light so brightly in your life? We need to trust in him. I pray that you've been blessed by this video, friends. Keep believing, keep looking to him, and let's live for him. Thank you so much for watching, and have a blessed day.